a pen and a paper to have close by. We're not going to do any big exercises, but there's just a couple of exercises where you're going to want pen and paper. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you all for being here. And so I am, so that we have the information, because this webinar, this information is packed full of information, and I want you to be able to see it all. I am going to take me off the screen. I'll come back later. Most of you know me and you know what I look like, so you don't really need to see me during this, but I'll pop back on later. So let's get started. So we're going to be talking about mindfulness for leaders. And I believe that we are all leaders, no matter where we are in our life or our organization. We're all leaders. And mindfulness helps us to be our ideal self and the ideal leader that we can be. So do you know how much money, if you're an entrepreneur, you're losing due to distractions and your own disengagement or stress? And if you're in a company, do you know how much money your company loses every year due to disengagement and distracted team members? Well, distractions are costing U.S. businesses between $450 and $650 billion a year. And if you just walk around a department or a company, you know it's in employees at every level of a company, from the stockroom floor to the C-suite, that's not paying attention just about half the time. I mean, I can say for myself that if I don't have a mindfulness practice, I can get distracted, for half the day if I'm not using my tools. And if you work for a global company, worldwide workers are disengaged 87% of the time. I mean, it's crazy. What is going on? I mean, our minds are somewhere else. The websites that we visit at work are usually not even about work. I mean, we're somewhere else. This lack of awareness, this mindfulness, this distractions, this leads to mistakes, bad decisions, and even accidents. All of these are detrimental to productivity and to our bottom line. And what is going on? Why is this? 54% of US workers say that they're closer to burnout than they were 5-6 years ago. And 6 years ago, the Harvard Medical School did a study, and in that study, 96% of senior leaders said that they felt burnout. 78% of companies today identify stress as the #1 workforce health risk. Stress is the top workforce health risk, more than obesity, more than smoking, and more than poor nutrition. But what do we do? What do we do when we're stressed out? We make really poor choices. And according to the World Health Organization, it's costing us over $300 billion. And the indirect healthcare costs, the absenteeism, lost productivity, the sick days, increase that number 200 to 300% more. I mean, that is staggering. Now, I don't know about you, but I look at all of these numbers and this makes me feel stressed out. I mean, if I was feeling fine before, this is the perfect time for me to engage in a mindfulness exercise. So I hope that you'll join me. But before we go there, I want to ask you to go to your body. I want you to ask yourself, if you ranked yourself physically, how you're feeling in this moment between 1 and 10, 1 being you feel horrible, and 10, like 1 being you feel tight, you feel rigid, you feel like in your body, physically, you just feel awful. you'd be a 1. And 10, you feel loose, you feel flexible, physically you feel great. So somewhere between that 1 and 10, just mark it on your paper or just mentally record it for yourself. And then ask yourself how you're feeling mentally. If you're stressed and overwhelmed, you'd be a 1. And if you feel like mindfully you're here and now in the moment, you'd be a 10. And then just consider where you are emotionally. 1, you'd be completely unable to manage your emotions, unable to regulate yourself if you were triggered. And 10, you are emotionally stable and able to control yourself. So if you just want to give yourself a ranking between 1 and 10, physically, mentally, and emotionally. And some of you have done this with me before. And just to explain it, 3 conscious breaths. It's a beautiful mindful meditation exercise where we're going to breathe in through our noses and our bellies are going to expand. And then we're going to exhale through our mouths and our bellies are going to contract or fall in. That's all we're going to do. If your feet are crossed or your legs are crossed, I would just invite you to uncross your legs, uncross your arms, and you can have your eyes open or your eyes closed. It doesn't matter. And just join me to breathe in consciously through your nose, allowing that deep breath to breathe into your diaphragm. So let's breathe in and exhale. Breathing in, filling up our bellies. Breathing out. One more time, inhale. And exhale. And if your eyes are closed, just gently, easily allow your eyes to open. And just breathe normally. And now rank yourself again, physically, mentally, and emotionally. Now that just took 10, 15, 20 seconds. Just a moment. And did your rankings go up? And this is just for you. If you want to put it in the chat box and share, that's great. If you want to email me later and talk about it, we're going to do this exercise again a little bit later. We're going to expand upon it. 3 conscious breaths. This exercise reduces your blood pressure. It lowers your heart rate. It calms your nervous system. And it's a mindful exercise that it creates a spaciousness in our physical bodies. It calms us emotionally, and it brings us into the present moment. It allows us to be here and now with whatever is directly before us. You know, that's what mindfulness is. Mindfulness is being in the present moment. When we're here now, we're not ruminating about the past. We're not casting forward and worrying about the future. My teacher, Ranga, says that mindfulness is like having a heightened sense of awareness. And another one of my teachers that I was with on a silent retreat said, being out in nature encourages a heightened sense of consciousness. I mean, think about it. Have you ever gotten a great idea or solved a problem that was nagging at you when you were out on a walk in nature? Or I know for me, if I'm walking with Gypsy, my dog, out in the early morning, and something has just been, I just can't figure this one thing out, and then we're just walking along, listening to the birds, or just noticing maybe a change of season, and then oh, wow, it'll just come to me because I'm not trying to solve it, but I'll just have that heightened sense of awareness, that heightened consciousness when out in nature. So mindfulness, when we're in the here and now, our focus can become laser-like, and we're able to really listen and hear what our friends and our family and our colleagues are saying, because we're more present. One of the teachers, Thich Nhat Hanh, says that the greatest gift that we can give is the gift of attention. So deep listening when we're present. We can have more enhanced connections when we're present with those that we work with and those that we lived with, which leads to more rich conversations and relationships. We are much better decision makers, and we don't have to go back and redo those decisions because we're not trying to do more than one thing at a time. Our innovation and creativity is improved. Our focus and our productivity increases and improves. And one of my favorites is our joy and our happiness gets better. All of this because our stress is so much lower. We're engaged, we're open, we're curious. We want to learn. Sign me up for that. I mean, this is why so many companies today are having mindfulness and meditation programs for their employees to bring them into more engagement, which actually leads to employee retention and more trust, and employees hang around for that. This is why so many leaders are coming out of the closet and admitting that they've been practicing mindfulness and meditation all along. Ray Dalio is the founder of the world's largest hedge fund firm, and he says meditation is the reason for his success. If you guys aren't following him on LinkedIn, he is becoming prolific. He's written a book now, and he used to really not share, but he's really interesting to follow. Bill George is the former CEO of Medtronic and is now a professor at Harvard Business School. And he says you will be a more effective leader if you practice mindfulness. And Phil Jackson, as many sports people are coming forward and saying that they practice mindfulness, he says it is the #1 reason that the Chicago Bulls won their 3 consecutive national championships. Remember the egos that were on that Bulls team. And because they were, as he says, simply paying attention to what's happening, they played as a team and they were able to play better. They were able to win more. And the list, Oprah, LeBron James, Katy Perry, 50 Cent, Kobe Bryant, Lisa Torkewitz. I think there's a couple people on this call that might know Lisa. So, we'll talk about Lisa. We'll talk about Lisa a little bit later. What a great story. And many high-profile leaders in sports and business and entertainment. One of my favorites, Arianna Huffington, is building a whole company around self-care with mindfulness at the forefront. And she believes, just as I do, that when we prioritize our well-being, our decision-making, our creativity, and our productivity improve, and the bottom line, our net profits grow. Steve Jobs, he practiced mindfulness and meditation. He took walks with his team members out in nature to encourage to heightened awareness for brainstorming. He said that these practices enhanced his creativity and his ability to empathize with consumers, which led to Apple's ability, or his ability, to constantly lead Apple's innovation. Companies like Aetna and Google, LinkedIn, Patagonia, Accenture, they offer mindfulness and meditation programs because they're seeing the benefits: employee engagement, increased productivity, increased innovation, and reduced healthcare costs. These companies are tracking this. So let's talk about why mindfulness and meditation is needed. This study with the National Institute of Health and the Mind Body Institute at Harvard reduced absenteeism, increased productivity. You know, it's the same, all of these different um, institutes and universities are having the same findings: enhanced relationships across the board, improved job satisfaction, and the ability to self-regulate your emotions and to control yourself and control your emotions. The research proves that when we slow down, when we pay attention, when we're present, when we're in the here and now, our stress goes down, we're more resilient, and we're able to adjust easily and quickly in fast-changing environments. We're engaged and we're happier. One way to get quickly present when we're feeling overwhelmed is to move into an attitude of gratitude. So if you have your pen and paper with you, and if you don't, just grab a pen and paper. We're just going to take a few moments. I want you to write down 3 things that you're grateful for. And it really helps if you would write a sentence. At the beginning of the sentence, say, I am so grateful for, I am truly blessed to have, I am so thankful for, and then list or then just say what it is that you're grateful for. So I'm going to be quiet for a moment and let you write out the 3 things that you're blessed to have, grateful for, thankful for, and write it in a sentence form. Now, as you write this, or if you're done writing this, did you sense anything shift? Maybe reread it. Is there, when you actually see the things that you've written, or as you write, things that you're appreciative of? For me, there's a shift. And if you don't keep I know some of you maybe already keep a gratitude journal. One of the quickest ways to shift into the present moment is to shift into gratitude. So we experience that joy. Whole Foods is developing a culture of compassion. And one of the practices that they're engaging in is a circle of appreciation. So that at the beginning of a meeting, they go around and each person shares very succinctly something that they're grateful for. And many times what they do is that they point out another person in the circle that they have appreciation for, or something that they've witnessed someone in the group, something that they've done that they have a gratitude for. And an insider told me that the board of directors was the last group to adopt this gratitude circle of appreciation. And you can imagine that it has made a huge shift in the way that they operate, in the way that all these groups operate. But it's interesting because a board is a group that comes together, you know, maybe quarterly or maybe 5 times a year. And they have, you know, really maybe sometimes different agendas. But it's been a fundamental shift. I can imagine when I've done this with groups that there's a kinder attitude. more gets accomplished because we're able to set aside our personal agendas. We're able to concentrate on the business and the people and set our personal agendas and our egos and all that other stuff that we bring into meetings sometimes aside. It's that all of that, and I'm going to put in parens stuff, gets left behind. We can leave those distractions behind. You know, at Google, they begin each meeting in a moment of silence to leave distractions behind. And I think maybe doing both of these practices can be a fabulous way to set up a meeting for focus, productivity, and success. You know, we're all just happier when we're in gratitude. Research it shows that happy employees are more productive by 12%. And in another study, happier salespeople sold 37% more than unhappy ones. I mean, I think that it would behoove us all to have happy salespeople. And if we're in sales, to be happier. There's the story of someone told me that in her insurance office, there was a gentleman who would boast that he meditated at lunch. And interestingly, he did all of his sales after lunch. And the question was, why don't you meditate in the morning also, so you can sell in the morning and in the afternoon? There was a Gallup study where they found companies with engaged employees, and we know that through mindfulness, we're more engaged. They outperformed those with disengaged employees by 200%. Now, Aetna has their own internal mindfulness and meditation program, and they found that job effectiveness improved dramatically, and they found a way to measure it, and that people who had been through the mindfulness program gained an average of 62 minutes per week. They figured out a way to attach a cost savings to this, and they figured out it was $3,000 per employee per year due to their improved focus and their decreased distraction. Now, they've had 13,000 people as of 2018, 13,000 people go through this program. So 13,000 times 3,000 means that they had in 2018 a $39 million cost savings to their bottom line. That is astounding. That is dramatic. That is what a mindfulness program can do for you. That's what a mindfulness program can do for your company. How often do you get distracted or interrupted during your day or during an hour? You know, if we don't have the tools to refocus that mindfulness provides, it can take between 17 and 23 minutes to get back on track after an interruption. And this can be a phone call. This can be, you know, if you have all your notifications on. So what do you do when something pings or dings? And do you have a tool to bring you back? When we practice mindfulness, we're more able to sustain our attention. I know before mindfulness, I would get interrupted and I'd think, oh, what was I doing? Well, I'm just going to check Facebook real quick, or I'm going to see how many people have read the article that I posted on LinkedIn, or I'm going to, and then the next thing I know, I'd be down that rabbit hole and it'd be 45 minutes later, think, oh my God, I haven't sent my newsletter out yet, or I didn't return so-and-so's call. So with the mindfulness practice, we know that when we get interrupted, we can get up and walk around. We can take 3 conscious breaths. There's so many things that we can do to get back on track. So even without the interruptions, I mean, even without the distractions, do you know the average worker's attention span today? Do you know the average attention span of a goldfish? The average attention of a goldfish is over 9 seconds. The average attention span of a US worker today is a little over 8 seconds. That's without a mindfulness practice. It used to be up in the 20s and 30s seconds, but with all of the technology that's come into play in the last 10, 15, 20 years, our attention span on a whole has gone down to less than a goldfish. But with the mindfulness practices, with the tools, we can come right back. We can do our 3 conscious breaths. And I want us to do our 3 conscious breaths, but we're going to take them a little bit deeper this time. But it's only going to take a moment. And you can do these anytime, anywhere. I'm going to invite you to put your feet on the earth. And this time, let's put our hands on our bellies with our middle fingers touching. And this might just help us get a little more into the belly breath. So breathe in through your nose and allow your belly to fill up. And as you do that, your middle fingers will come apart as your belly expands. And then as you exhale and your belly contracts or falls again, your middle fingers come together. So we want this deep diaphragm breathing, the deep lobes of our lungs to fill up. So breathe in, fingers come apart, breathe out. Middle fingers touch again, breathe in, exhale. And keeping your hands on your belly, shoulders relaxed, arms relaxed. Breathe normally. Just notice your hands on your belly rising and falling. When your mind wanders, just gently, kindly, tenderly bring your mind back, sensing your feet on the earth. Relax your shoulders, noticing your breath in your belly as it rises and falls. If your eyes are open, just focusing on an unmovable, immovable spot or object. If your eyes are closed, that's fine too. Just breathing in and breathing out. And as you breathe in, you can say to yourself, be. And as you breathe out, say to yourself, here. Be here. If you find yourself thinking about the past, casting into the future, put your hands on your belly anytime, anywhere, and just say, be here. And you can release your hands from your belly and put them in your lap or on your thighs. Continuing to breathe at your normal pace. And on the next inhale, just notice your body in this space, in your chair. And on the next inhale, wiggle your fingers and toes. And on the next inhale, open your eyes, if they were closed. So remember, if you have any comments or any questions, you can put them in the chat box. So the mindfulness practices that we've talked about so far, just the 3 conscious breaths. And then what we just did, 3 conscious breaths with a little add-on. And we know that if we feel overwhelmed or stressed, we can take a walk to get us back into the here and now, or better yet, take a walk in nature if we can. Or we can cultivate some sort of gratitude or appreciation, either by writing it down or sharing with someone. We can invite maybe a coworker or a friend to just share with us something they're grateful for, and we can share with them. And especially at the beginning of a meeting, we can create a culture of compassion within our department or within our whole company by beginning meetings. Remember Steve Jobs, he took his team on walks in nature for the brainstorming. And, a lot of senior leaders will say that they begin their day with walks in nature. That's one of the things I love about having Gypsy, is that I know I'm going to get at least 2 walks a day. And when I'm doing these webinars and I say that, she comes running into the room thinking that we're going for a walk. But to stay focused at work, we really do need to get up about every 30 or 45 minutes and move around. And we all have our sweet spots. And maybe you all know what your sweet spot is. But our mind needs that break. So if we're at our desk for more than an hour and we think that we're being productive, we probably need to get up and just walk around and break up the energy, break up the pace, or just shift the energy a bit. So I have a bunch of tips on focus and productivity that's tied to mindfulness. It's my productivity boosters, 10 ways to get it all done with grace and ease. And I also have a focus meditation that one of my colleagues developed. And you can listen to this while you're working. Then it really helps you focus and it keeps you on track while you're working. These are both free. If you want these, you can just let me know in the chat box, or you can pop me an email to haven@havenecarter.com, and we'll get these to you in the next couple of days via email. But this focus meditation is beautiful. It's timed at just about 41 minutes. So for me, I know that that's just about my sweet spot, and that when this is over, then it's time for me to move on to another task that I'm basically just not being productive anymore, and I move on to my next activity, or I get up and move around rather, and then I move on to the next activity. So when you think about that last meditation that we did, it was just a few moments. Can you imagine taking 3 conscious breaths, or even taking 3 conscious breaths and telling yourself to be here, be calm, breathe in, breathe out, before an important meeting, or before a crucial conversation or crunchy conversation, before a phone call, or inviting everyone to do that before a meeting. Google, like I was telling you, they have that silence. You could be doing that during the silence before a meeting started. When we take that moment to become present, we're just more focused. We're more productive. We make better decisions. We're more creative, and science proves it. more and more studies are being done that just proves that meditation basically is just rebuilding our gray matter of our brain. You know, for the longest time, even scientists said we couldn't change the physical composition of our brains, that our brains were just our brains, and there was just nothing we could do about it, that we maybe could change our thinking habits, but not the physical makeup of our brain. And now we know that we can with meditation, that we actually are taking the cerebral cortex, that gray matter, and we are making it thicker. And those areas of our brain are associated with attention and emotional integration, which leads to increased self-awareness, compassion, and introspection. And the areas of our brain that are associated with anxiety and stress are getting less dense. They're actually atrophying. So our well-being and our quality of life improve because of meditation. So the neocortex, the reasoning part of the brain, actually is getting bigger and thicker and stronger. We're actually working that muscle. And the limbic system and the reptilian part of the brain, those are actually getting weaker. We're able to control them better, is what is a better way of put it. We actually are not reactive. So we need those parts of our brain. You know, we are built to be able to see where there's danger and react quickly, but then to very quickly go, just like animals do. If you see an animal, when they get scared, they let that emotion go through them. They shiver, and then they let it go, and they go very back quickly into calm. And the more we practice mindfulness with a meditation practice, we also can do that. We can regulate our emotions, we can feel what we feel it completely, and we can let it go. So HBR, Harvard Business Review, published this study, which says that we literally can smooth out the grooves of our old thinking pattern, where we used to react, think negatively, procrastinate, judge ourselves and others, and become, create these new grooves where we are much more aware of ourselves and others, where we are able to keep our brains healthy, support self-regulation and effective decision-making, and protect ourselves from toxic stress. And in a word, just as Bill George, the former CEO of Medtronic and the professor at Harvard Business School, says, mindfulness is a must-have. In summary, self-awareness goes up. We're able to regulate our emotions. Our anxiety and stress goes down. Our overall well-being is increased. We're more resilient. We make better decisions. We're more focused. We're more productive. We're generally happier beings because of our meditation practice. So I want to point out that these studies are based on individuals practicing mindfulness meditation by sitting in stillness for at least 20 minutes every day. So this is not listening to guided meditation, and guided meditation is a beautiful portal for getting us into silence. But these studies, and there are many more like these, that prove that sitting in quiet meditation, focusing on the breath, will bring us all of these benefits. So where do you find 20 minutes? Remember how we used to be distracted and it would take us between 17 and 23 minutes to get back on track? Well, now with these tools, we have that 20 minutes and more. Plus, it sounds counterintuitive, but when we take 5, 10, even 2 minutes in the morning to meditate, we get that time tenfold back later in the day, because we're so much more focused, we're so much more clear about what's important, and we stop spending time doing the things that are unimportant. We get that time back in so many ways. So, whenever we feel that the feeling of overwhelm, we can just stop and breathe. So if 20 minutes feels like no way, I say start with 3 conscious breaths. I have plenty of clients who set their alarm for 5, 7 times a day, and they just stop and sit for 3 conscious breaths. Sometimes it's 6 conscious breaths. I have one client who did a lot of driving, and I've told this story a million times, and I'll keep telling it because it's so compelling. She would put one hand at every stoplight. She would just consciously place one hand at 2 o'clock, one hand at 10 o'clock, and do her breathing with her eyes open at the stoplight. And she did that for a year and a half before she ever sat in stillness in the morning. And now she has a practice, but she still does her breathing at the stoplights. It's beautiful. You know, there's an acronym STOP, S-T-O-P, stop. The T is take 3 breaths. The O is observe. And if we need to go back and take 3 more breaths, we do. And the P is proceed. So whenever you feel overwhelmed, you can just remind yourself, stop. Stop. Take 3 breaths. Observe how I'm feeling, like that ranking from 1 to 10. You can rank yourself if you need to, but just, am I better? And am I ready to proceed? Sean. Sean's a senior leader with a Fortune 100 company, and his career, which had always been fantastic, had plateaued. He was overwhelmed and close to burnout. His team was extremely frustrated because he'd begun to micromanage them, and he was extremely intimidating and very reactive. He decided to take part of in a intensive mindfulness class. He knew that he either had to do that, or he was afraid he would be fired, or he thought he might have to quit because he was feeling so overwhelmed. After just a few weeks, Sean reported that he was able to resist jumping in and trying to control everything that his team did at work. He became more supportive, and he began to delegate more responsibility to his team. And as a result, they began to trust him more. They noticed that he was less impulsive, and so their stress levels went down. And because they felt like he trusted them more, they became more engaged. Their decision-making got better. They got more creative and innovative. Their work improved. And instead of being fired, Sean actually got promoted. Sean was part of a University of Pennsylvania study where 42 senior leaders were involved. And across the board, they saw stronger relationships between superiors, peers, and subordinates. They had better project results, improved crisis management, increased budgets and team headcount. People were more trusted with sensitive information. And not only did people get promotions, but they got more positive performance reviews. And another piece of this was an emotional intelligence competency piece. And what they noticed is that these senior leaders were more empathetic with their peers, subordinates, and superiors. Their ability to manage conflict improved, and their ability to communicate persuasively improved dramatically. And so the bottom line was they became more effective leaders. And this, again, harkens back to what Bill George had to say about what he experienced with mindfulness. So Sean, as he practiced mindfulness meditation, just became more aware of his patterns of behavior. And he was able to resist his old habits and to adopt new habits. He was able to manage his stress and just turn his whole career around, as were the other leaders that took part in the study. So to become a mindful leader, really boils down to three things. And I believe we can do this in our lives um, just by using the tools that we've talked about tonight. So I'm going to start at the bottom. We notice our mental state because we are all contagious. And if we notice our mental state before we engage with others and use a tool to adjust it so that we're either neutral or positive, then we can be, we are aware, we are conscious of um, how we can affect those around us. So if we notice that we're off or we're feeling a little emotionally unstable, we can breathe in and out. We can practice some gratitude. We can take a walk. We can decide we're going to go into work a little bit later and take a walk around the neighborhood. But we do that adjustment before we engage with others. I'm going to now go to the top one, which is be aware of your attention when listening. So when you are, just think about maybe a conversation that you had today with a colleague and just reflect, were you fully, deeply engaged, or were you planning what you were going to say? Or were you thinking about what you ought to be doing rather than having this conversation? And what can you do in the future to be completely present with the people that you're interacting with? So just be aware. I mean, I can remember saying to someone, you know what? Can you start over? I just realized I really wasn't completely here now when you began speaking, and I want to give you my full attention. But I also want to let you know that I really only have about 3 minutes, but I want to be here for you during that 3 minutes. So we can set boundaries around that. And then the middle one, facilitate intentionally. You know, it doesn't have to be our meeting for us to step in as a mindful leader and help make sure that everyone has a voice and everyone feels safe speaking up. And I really believe that this practice of the circle of appreciation can help everyone feel safe to speak up. I know sometimes in meetings, there can be people who are very comfortable speaking up, and so they will tend to dominate conversations or discussions. And other people who tend to be more reticent feel like, oh, the conversation's going great. I don't need to voice what I'm thinking or feeling. But if they've already spoken up once, their voice is already out. And so there's already this sensibility that they can speak up again. But if they're not speaking up, as a mindful leader, we can step in and say, I think it's important for everyone to have a voice. And we haven't heard from John, Susan, and Jamal yet. And I really want to hear what they have to say. And it doesn't even have to be our meeting for us to do that. In other companies, they have passed around a talking stick. And they say, you know, in order for this meeting to end on time, we're going to pass the talking stick and everybody gets to say how they, what they want to have happen on this particular issue. But you know, then the leader is going to ultimately make the decision, or however decisions are made. But if it is a meeting where everyone gets to say, then you want everyone to feel safe to speak up, not let a lot of times the same people dominate or take over a meeting. We want to we want to be aware of the habits of meetings and intentionally facilitate an environment so that there's safety and there's ease for everyone to have a voice. So I want to mention here the program at Google It's called Search Inside Yourself. And I love their program because they are focused on using mindfulness to create more emotional intelligence. And it's a threefold concentration. They have an attention training so that the mind can be developed to be calm and clear. Their self-knowledge or self-awareness piece is so people can objectively observe themselves without judgment and understand what their strengths are, and also witness their weaknesses and understand it's okay to have a weakness and it's okay to ask for help. And then the third area is to create healthy mental habits like kindness and compassion. The people who have gone through this program, which they call SIYLI, say that they're calmer, more patient. They have increased that their listening skills are so much better. They're better able to manage their stress, and that they're much better able to diffuse their negative emotions. And there is a 6-month waiting list to get into the Search Inside Yourself program. I heard some of these people speak at a conference a couple of years ago, and it's just really amazing. So do you guys remember Lisa Torkewitz? Maybe some of you know Lisa. Lisa's a real leader. I mean, she does not lead in the traditional way. Lisa is not the president. She's nowhere near the C-suite. She's not a CEO, CIO, CFO, COO, but she changed a whole department. And she influenced many people to offer to alter their lives by the way that she changed her own. When I met Lisa, she was the proverbial punching bag welcome mat in her department. And Lisa did her work. She did her boss's work. She did her team's work because she just did not know how to say no. Lisa would go home at night and she would yell at her kids, not speak to her husband, and just escape into reality TV every night. Lisa started coming to one of my meditation classes. And then she came on as a private coaching client. Over time, Lisa remembered who she really was and what her true values were. And she started to appreciate and respect herself. She set healthy boundaries, and she started to say no. When a surgeon yelled at her, which had happened a lot, she one day finally held her ground, and she politely informed him that he was not allowed to speak to her that way. He was not allowed to speak to anybody that way anymore. And then she started to push the work back to its rightful owners with kindness. And when she would go home at night, she would help her kids with her homework and cook dinner. And she and her husband started planting a garden for their yard, which was a hobby that they enjoyed very much together when they were first married and before the kids were born. This didn't happen overnight. Lisa made a huge commitment to herself that she knew she wanted change. You know, change takes practice, it takes repetition, it takes accountability, it takes support. And as her teacher and as her coach, I was able to provide the accountability and support and the encouragement, but she did the heavy lifting. You know, and Lisa also not only did she change, her work life and her home life, but she also helped change life in her community. Lisa's ladies at church had kind of, they weren't really that supportive when she first started coming to meditation class and working with a mindful meditation coach. And she'd also lost like 30 pounds because she'd been mindfully eating. And they're like, Lisa, what are you doing? And she was telling them, and they said, would you, like, before the women's Bible study, maybe teach us to meditate? Maybe we could all learn about this mindfulness. So she also helped the women at church change. So, she shifted this toxic environment at work into a harmonious one. One person, by taking better care of herself, changed all of this. That's really what I love to see. And that's what I love to help people do, because change is hard. It is hard. It takes commitment, accountability, support, and repetition. And as a coach, that's what I help people do. That's what I help Lisa do. And that's why I love this story so much. So if you want to change anything in your life, maybe it's more than what Lisa had to deal with. Maybe it's not as much, but just pop me an email and we can have a conversation about whatever the individual situation is in your life right now. Every situation, every circumstance is unique. And I'm happy to have a complimentary conversation with you about what it is that we can do for you. And I also work with people outside the realm of if you already know how to meditate, we just work on your mindset and perspective and clarity, because we can always have support and accountability around that. So what did we learn tonight? Quite a bit. So I just want to review everything, all the mindfulness practices that we have now at our fingertips to help us get back on track when we feel overwhelmed, when we feel stressed out, when we get interrupted, or when we feel like we're distracted or we don't know what to do next. We can always stop and take 3 conscious breaths. And then we can do what I call the 3 conscious breaths plus. We can take a walk. We can take a walk in nature. We can sit in meditation for 20 minutes. And I prefer to do that in the morning. We realign after interruptions. And that can just be to get up and do a little dance around our desk. We can take quiet time before each meeting, before each phone call, before each conversation if we need to. It only takes a moment. We can foster and develop a culture of compassion and appreciation. And we can listen attentively. By being present, we can help facilitate intentionally, and we just are aware of our mental state, and we notice when we're negative or we're unstable, and we use one of these tools to flip ourselves when we need to be either neutral or we want to be positive. We want to get into the here and now. So I've given you a lot to think about. So is your mind full? Are you mindful? And I'm always reminded that our animals are our best teachers because they are here and now always. So as a reminder, this is how you can get in touch with me, haven@havenecarter.com. And my website, if we're not connected on LinkedIn, please connect with me on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. If you would like the productivity boosters, 10 ways to get it all done with grace and ease, I'm happy to send you that. If you would like the focus meditation, I can Dropbox that to you. And I'm going to check the chat box. Looks like we're all clear there. And if your company is interested in a mindfulness and meditation program, I am now offering mindfulness and meditation programs, and they are customized for the company. And I'm happy to talk with any of you all about that. Also, thank you. I've got a big thank you there. Thank you, Brianna. It's not, thank you for coming. It's nice to see you here. Are there any questions? Well, I don't see any questions, so I will just leave you with our slide here. Is your mind full or mindful? Pop me an email. Let me know if you'd like the focus meditation, which is really awesome to keep you focused. And if you would like the productivity boosters, you can have those. And I'll just pop back on to say thank you all so much for joining me tonight. And namaste. Be here now. We'll just check the chat box again. Are there any questions?